Everyone, and a warm welcome to today's webinar from a very, very damp northeast of England today. Absolutely bucketing down this morning. Today we're looking at service invoices. I think we've got this scheduled in for around about 45 minutes. Just depends how many questions we get along the way. I'll try and pick them up as best I can. Just me presenting this session with you today. So do bear with me when you submit your questions. I'll try and pick them up as soon as I can, or try and react to them. As normal, if we don't get a chance to pick them up, I will drop you an email afterwards. Right, a little bit of housekeeping before we get stuck into today's session though. As normal, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. Sometimes you might see a little bit different the way the webinar looks as well, as we're experimenting with a new interface a little bit, but you should have this toolbar down the right hand side of your screen today. So don't need a microphone, it will be muted automatically and you can't unmute yourself. If you've got any questions, just click the little question mark, which is within the speech bubble. Give it a click, it'll expand the panel, you'll get access to the questions box at the bottom. That's where you can start typing your comments, your questions, pop them in there. Remember to click send, otherwise I won't get them. And if you do want a copy of today's handout, there is only the one for this morning's session, which is the full colour edition. Then you can download that during the session as well. Now, as normal, the session is being recorded. A link to that will be included on the follow-up email. You'll receive that follow-up email around about an hour after we finish. And it will also include a link to our registration page. So we've now added our January sessions in there for next year. January 26th. It's actually not that far away, but it seems a long time still before we get there, but just round the corner almost. So January 26 sessions are there, you can book onto them. Management reports is a common theme, clearing records, running year end, all the common ones that people like to attend at that time. So get yourself registered for those if you haven't before, you just want a bit of a recap. And of course, there will be a link to our recordings page as well. Right, okay, let's have a look at our agenda. So quite a small agenda for this morning's session. Some of you may have attended product invoices with Laura over the last couple of weeks, so you might already be familiar with invoicing. So today we're looking obviously at service invoices. It'll follow a common sort of pattern. Start with an introduction, get stuck into the demonstrations, which is why you're here, just so you can see what those options look like and try and familiarize you with the options that you have available. Maybe you'll pick up a few tips along the way as well if you're already working in this area. Maybe you're torn between product invoices and service. We'll try and sort of get rid of a few of those myths as well along the way. Once we've run through the demonstration, which obviously forms the majority of today's session, explain a little bit about where you can find out more, the further support, and of course, if there's any outstanding questions, I'll try and pick those up as well. So anyway, let's get stuck into our webinar today. So service invoicing. Now, service invoicing, what's all that about? Well, if you sell services rather than products, then in Sage 50, you've got that option to raise a service invoice. The default will be product invoices, it always is, but you can change that. We'll have a look at that in the demo as well. And it's quite a simple process. Loads of little bits come into the equation as you go through that entering of your invoices, but it's generally a simple process to enter your invoices and update them to the relevant customer's account. So step one is to create your invoices. You would then, generally you would email or print. You don't have to do it in that order, the email or print, you could just leave that to the end. And then update ledgers, the process of updating it to the customer's account so that it's reflected in your accounts. Don't miss that bit out. You will be, if you do miss that bit, you'll be reminded when you run your VAT return. One of the verification settings, it'll identify all of those invoices that you've entered that falls within or prior to your VAT period, and it'll say, right, you haven't updated these. You don't want to find what used to happen is people would forget, they'd submit their VAT return and then they'd realise too late. They would then need to be picked up on the next VAT return. So VAT return will remind you if you do forget that step. Right, okay. Now, I always like to cover this bit. Which type of invoice? Which type of invoice is right for you? Is it product? Is it service? Some of you might be torn. Some of you might just think, well, I do stock, I sell products. Great, it will be product invoicing. But for services, if you're mainly service-based, you've really got the choice. Now, the idea with the service invoice, it lets you enter an unlimited amount of text per item. So if you've got really lengthy descriptions, that's probably for you. But services aren't just about big descriptions. It might be small descriptions that you have. So things like what you would think of as a call out charge, hourly rates, daily rates. You might have set services, a fixed amount, standard description. Now, if you are service-based and you sort of fall into that category, then maybe product invoicing would be better for you. You could set those services up as non-stock items. Or you could even, if you're on professional, you can even flag them as a service record within the product. Just means it doesn't record any sort of movement against the item. It's just a service item. It means when you enter your products, you can pull those services onto your invoice. It means it's a little bit quicker. You're not sitting there typing in sort of daily rate or call out charge as the description. You're just pulling it through from that list of products. So it can be a little bit quicker. You can have obviously your pre-calculated rates in there. So if you have call out charges, but maybe in the middle of the night call out charge, is you charge more for that than during the day, over the weekend, bank holiday charge, that type of thing. You can set that up. You're not sat there with a calculator trying to work out what that charge is for keying it into a service. You've got it preset on your list of products. And you're just pulling that through onto your product invoice. So don't rule out that product invoice. Have a good think about that. But obviously, we are going to concentrate on service invoicing in today's session. So let's get cracking. So we'll get stuck into a bit of a demonstration. And again, keep your questions coming. Should be quite quiet, I'm assuming. So really just a handful of you logged in this morning. So good chance to get your questions answered if you have any. So I'll switch across to my screen. We'll get stuck in. So invoices and credits. You've got the ledger down the left-hand side, available in all levels of the software. It doesn't matter whether you're on Essential, Standard, Professional, Client Manager, you will have the invoices and credits ledger. If it's not there when you log in, two reasons. One is your access levels. When you log in, it means your username doesn't have access to invoices and credits. The other is that potentially you've right-clicked at some point somewhere on this toolbar down the right-hand side, you've right-clicked, you've seen the options, and for whatever reason, you've switched off invoices and credits. Now you can do that for other options that maybe you don't use. So you might have access to them, but actually maybe you don't use it. Diary, for instance. Very, very few people use the diary option. I always mention that one because so few people use it. You can right-click, find it on the list, just say, actually, I don't want to use that. I'll just declutter my list a little bit. If you want them back, that's fine. Either right-click, switch it back on, or right-click, use defaults. It'll pop it back on the list. So they're going to be the only two reasons why they're maybe missing from your toolbar down the left there. Anyway, we're going to go into invoices and credits. If anyone wants to have a play with this as well, remember you've got the demonstration data, you've got the practice data. So if you needed to access those, it would just be File, Open, and you've got the demo data and the practice data listed. Practice data these days, you can either go into a blank company, start from scratch, or you can actually restore a copy of your backup into that practice company and have a go at whatever you want to do on a copy of your data, so without impacting your live data. But it means probably a bit more meaningful to you then as well. Anyway, we're just going to stick with where I am. So we've gone into invoices and credits. I'm going to click new invoice. You'll see when I do that, in the top here, defaults to invoice, and the format is product currently. Now, if you're forever clicking on the drop down and switching it to service, you can change that. Now, I'll come back to that in a second, but if I just toggle between the two, so if I click onto product, you'll see we've got things like a quantity column. That's the main sort of difference. So back to service, we get the details, the amount, the net, and the VAT. So again, back to product. So quantity column we don't need because it's a service. And obviously we're not using the products and services drop-down list, so we don't need this section either. But again, if you had your services set up as products, maybe a product invoice would be that little bit quicker for you. Anyway, we're looking at service. So again, if I'm coming in every time and I'm forever changing this to service, because that's what we do, we can just close out of here. And if I go into settings at the top, so settings, we've got an option, invoice and order defaults. Again, if you don't have that listed, might just be invoice defaults on yours, depending on the level of your software. But if you don't have either an invoice defaults or an invoice and order defaults, it's going to be down to your access levels. So the manager would need to change that for your access levels if you need it. Anyway, we'll go into settings, invoice and order defaults, and it'll bring up this window. Now I might as well cover the three key areas that while we're in here. First of all, you've got your default invoice. So by default, it's going to be set to product invoice. And I can set that to service invoice. So every time I go into an invoice, click new invoice, it'll then default to service. You can do the same for your credit notes as well. I'll just leave it set to service invoice. So I suppose that's the first key thing to mention in here. The other one is the options tab. So the options tab thing to mention in here is invoices start from. So where do you want your numbering sequence to start from? Now, some businesses, they might think, well, actually, let's say I raise 1,000 invoices a year. You might come in here and you think, well, actually, I want my invoices to start for next year. When you get to that point, I want it to start with 26, and then I'll start 001 or 0001, and it'll start incrementing from that point. You might just continue with your standard numbering sequence. So that's up to you. Start mine at, what should I start at? 5, I'll pop 500 in, just so you can see that. Again, similar for credits as well. You might set them away from a certain number. So that's where you would set that. If you're just new to that area, or you're wanting to move it to another number. The other one to mention, the other sort of group of settings in here is the update ledgers. And it's these two options here. Now, when you update your invoice to the ledgers, so it transfers that information from the invoice onto the customer's account and into your accounts in general, against those transactions that appear on the activity, what do you want to include firstly within the reference field? And also secondly, within the extra reference field. Now, I would always say the transaction reference, leave it set to the invoice number. You get a choice. You can have the invoice number itself, your order number, or the customer order number. I would always say just for ease, and it makes a lot more sense to leave it to be the invoice number. This one, however, the extra reference, you've got a few choices on this one. Obviously, if you've already got the reference set to the invoice number, you're not going to set this one to the invoice number. You can choose your order number, which is in the top right-hand corner. When we go on to enter an invoice, you'll see that in a moment. Or you can choose the customer's order number, which is again, towards the top right, but it's that longer box sort of beneath where you've got the invoice number, the date, and the account reference. or you can have it update with nothing. So that's where you can change it if required. Any sort of questions so far? Keep them coming if you do think of anything, if you're not sure. And if you see anything in the background and you think, what about that one? I suppose the other one to mention as well is this one here, this little one. So update service invoices using the following text. Now, obviously, it's not switched on by default, this one. So you can see it's not ticked. And when I update the invoice to the ledger, what I could do, if I'm not interested on the customer's account of having the actual detail of the service invoice in the description, then I could switch this on, and what it will say by default, it would say services. So that's when I update to the ledgers, that will transfer across into the details of the actual transaction. You can change that text as well if you want. If you don't have it ticked, as you'll see, it'll take some of that text across from you from the description of the actual invoice. So that's not switched on by default, this one. Let's just OK that. Right, let's head back to invoices and we'll finally get stuck into actually entering one. So if I click new invoice, it should now default to service, which it does. I could still change it if I need to. I could go back to product, but you'll see it defaults to service. Picks up today's date. If yours isn't picking up today's date, well, it means either your PC date is incorrect, very unusual these days when everyone's got an internet connection, or it means that when you last opened Sage, it picked up a date and you've not really closed it since. You might have locked your PC here or there. So let's say you were working yesterday, just double checking the dates there, it was the 8th yesterday. So if you opened Sage and you didn't close out and just locked your PC when you went home last night and you've come in today, when you go into Sage, you'll find it's still set to the 8th. It won't tick that date on for you. So otherwise, it should pick up today's date. You've got your account reference. Now, a lot of people don't realize at this point that you can actually create a new customer at this point. You've got the new option at this point. So if it is a brand new customer, you don't need to go into customers and set them up and then come back to invoicing. You can just create it on the fly at this point. So you can click new, it'll bring up a blank record. So I'll just put my initials in. Let's put some numbers after it as well. Just put Michael as the company name. I'll leave everything else as is. Obviously, it's just a case of keying in information like your street 1, 2, etc. And then obviously you'd save it. Pops it on the list. There it is. I can easily select it. Actually, I'll do a different one because I'll choose the one that's actually got some address details in. So we'll just choose that first one. You can see when I do that, it'll bring through the customer's name and address for me. The other thing it will do as well is it will calculate the due date. So it will look at the customer's record and say, right, well, these are the terms, the payment terms set within that. So it'll calculate the due date for you. So I'm assuming I must have mine set to 30 days, which is the default. But you can overwrite that there and then as well if you want. Now, just coming back to these fields on the upper right, so invoice number will say auto number. That means the invoice number will be allocated at the point of when you click save. It won't be allocated before then. It won't reserve a number or anything like that. It will just, when you click save, it'll look back at the settings, invoice and order defaults, and it will look at that update ledgers and say, right, well, what's your next invoice number? Where do invoice numbers start from? So mine should pick up 500 when I save it in a few minutes time. So that's the point it will allocate it to that one. Order number, so this is your internal order number if you have one. Now, if anyone uses sales order processing, and maybe you generate your invoice from that, then it will pull it through into this field. If you're not using sales order processing, or even if you are, you can still change it if you want to. So that's your internal order number. Customers is this box here. So again, when we were talking about that update ledgers, what do you want to update into the extra reference field against the transaction? Is it this field or is it this field? Up to you. You've got your due date, which we've already mentioned. You can change that if required. And then you've got your item number. So that's just going to give me an idea of what item I've got highlighted. Obviously, it says no items at this point in time. Right, so let's get into the main body of the invoice at this point. Now, some of you will have really long descriptions. If you're copying it from elsewhere, you can use copy paste, up to you. Otherwise, just a case of typing that in. Now, some of you might want to list the parts. So if you're listing parts, that might just form part of your description. It depends how you want to break down. Do you need to show quantities? Do you need to show unit prices? If you do, then product invoicing is going to be for you. If you don't need that breakdown and you're just going to quote a price, then service invoices a lot better. So I'll just say parts and labour. Pop in the amount. I'll just say £100. It'll calculate the VAT for me. And then if we tab down, we're down to the sort of second line. And we can enter as many lines as we want. We can also, if we click back to this item, if I just do shift and return, it wraps it down to a second line. Maybe I provide the breakdown at that point. Just delete that though. So that was just shift and return. If you need sort of almost like to format the text within your details there. I'll just leave it at parts and labour though. So far, nice and easy. We've keyed in a description, we've added an amount that works out the net and the VAT for me. Now, if I want to sort of have a drill down and have a look behind the scenes as to what's happened there, I've got this little arrow attached to this. I can click that arrow, or I can press F3 or F4 on my keyboard, and it will bring up the edit item line. Again, you might be familiar with this if you've been doing invoicing for a little while. So you've got your description, you've got your details. It's exactly the same thing in this instance. You've got an order reference. Now that will be taken from the sales order if you've entered one. You've got your values area. So quantity, it's going to default to 1 because it's a service item. And then you've got your unit price that you've already keyed in. You can change those if needed. You've got your discount percentages or discount amount. So whatever you enter, it will feed the other one. So if I just say, let's do 10% discount, it will calculate, in this case, a £10 discount off that net unit price. Similarly, if I change the amount, so let's just put 15, you'll see it changes the percentage accordingly. I'm just going to reset that back to 0 though. Shows me the net, shows me the VAT. Now, the reason I can amend that VAT is in some instances, you might find a little bit of rounding here and there. So if you're out by a penny or a cent, because of rounding when you've calculated, I can override that if necessary. But I'm just going to accept that. You'll be more likely to get that on service invoicing if you're just merging everything together. And maybe you're doing a manual calculation. So when you come to actually enter your invoice, you think, oh, it's just a tiny bit different. It's going to look a bit odd when I send that invoice now. I've said it'll be this amount. So you can override that VAT amount if required. You've got your posting details. Now this is going to be picked up from the customer's account. So it'll pick up the nominal code from the customer record, the tax code from the customer record, and also the department from the customer record. Now that's a little bit different to product invoicing. Product invoicing by default, it would pick all of this information up by default from the actual product record itself. Something to be aware of. You've got overrides though for product invoicing if needed. You've got an option for additional line information, and of course if anyone uses projects, I know some of you do, you'll be able to link this off, this sort of show the income as the result from this service invoice, and allocate that to a particular project. Again, some of you wondering, projects I haven't got that. You need to be on the professional level to have access to the projects ledger. Last couple of options, just to quickly mention at the bottom, calculate net. So when you key a value in, so if I key that £100 in, I think, well, that includes tax. So I can click calculate and it'll work that out for me. So overall, we've got 83.33 and we've got tax of 16.67. So it's £100 in total. I'm just going to set that back so we've got some nice round figures. Discounts. This just shows you the breakdown. It doesn't let you change anything in this. It just shows you the breakdown. Loads of different discount options available for invoicing in Sage. So you've got things like customer specific discount, where you've entered that in the record. You've got stock quantity, which obviously that's not going to apply to a service invoice. Similar for stock discount table, it's not going to apply in this instance. Invoice value, potentially it could. A manual discount, where I've just keyed something in, and then you've got the total. On top of that, you've got things like in the background, you've got net value discounts, and also potentially you could add a negative line onto the invoice as well if needed. So this is how you can see any breakdown if you're looking at sort of thinking, oh, I've got a discount amount or a discount percentage. You're wondering where that breakdown, what it is, what it relates to. This is going to give you it's going to point you in the right direction. It'll show you the appropriate amount against each one as well. Right, we'll just OK that. So that's the edit item line. Obviously, with regard to the individual or the main body of the invoice, you can add as many items as you want on there. Let's quickly work through the options down the left-hand side. So we're on the details tab. That's what we've been keying in so far. Order. This is where you can enter delivery addresses. You've got additional notes field. You've got your DUNS number, or what you term I suppose your credit reference number, your Dun & Bradstreet number. You've got Incoterms, for those of you trading abroad. You've got your customer order details. So again, it'll pull certain information through. This information it generally isn't included on your invoice, but it could be. So if you want to include things like customer telephone number or the contact, and you want that to be pulled through onto your invoice, just be a case of amending your invoice layout to pull that through onto it. And custom fields, you've got what we term your custom fields. You've got 3 of those in invoicing. You've got them in quotations, order processing. Some of you may have attended webinars where we look at those mainly within customers and suppliers and product records, but you do have them in here. Now, probably the most common question is, well, what would I use them for? You can use them for whatever you want. There's no set use for that. They are just text fields. Is there anything else you want to record against the invoice? It might be that for new customers, what you do is you have you use analysis 1. You can change the titles of these as well. You use analysis 1 for thing, well, can I just ask where did you hear about us? It's whatever you want to record in here. Again, that information, if needed, it could be pulled through back to your invoice if required. So you might use it for some other information. Similar for notes. They're not included on your invoice by default, but they could be. Just a case of you amending your layout and adding the appropriate data fields onto it. You've got your delivery address. It might be a one-off. You might have delivery addresses set up for your customer. Where you've got the delivery addresses, so you don't have this option if you're on the essentials level, but where you do, you might have this where actually you want it to be delivered direct to a customer's address, a supplier's address, even a company address that you've got set up for yourself. It lets you choose. Obviously, it's going to default to the customer, this customer, and their addresses that they have available. Just means if you were like, I don't know, probably a purchase order would be more appropriate, where you're ordering some goods from your supplier and you say, right, actually, I want you to deliver this direct to my customer, and you're providing that detail on the purchase invoice as the delivery address. So not commonly used. You're probably going to choose one of the customer's addresses if required. Let's get on to the footer. So in the footer, you've got carriage information, so carriage charge information. You can predefine some of this as well if required. You've got settlement terms. So if you do offer settlement terms, so what you may refer to as early payment discount, you would probably have that set up within the customer's record. You can see it pull through a minor percentage for me there. I've just zeroed it out. It's not as common these days. So it would pull it through if you set it, but you can override that there and then as well if needed. Global, again, not massively used these days. The reason it's not massively used is because really there's no restriction on the number of transactions that you enter. There are guidelines these days of something like, I think it's 250,000 transactions and 20,000 invoices. So what this used to be used for, global, and still is used, I should say, is let's say you've got 5 items on an invoice. When you update that to the ledgers, it would update as what you would term 5 splits, 5 individual transactions. They would be grouped, but there'd be 5 transactions. Now, what this would do, the global option, if you specify a nominal code and you've got a tax code there, it would update everything as one value only. So one invoice, one split. It would just group it all together, the relevant values, etc. So not massively used. It's something that used to be used historically when I was a lot younger and worked on support. It was quite common to use this option just to reduce the amount of transactions that you had. And then finally, you've got your tax analysis there as well, based on what you've entered on the main body. Final tab to mention is your payment reference or your payment tab. It's going to ask you for basic payment details, so you can enter your payment here at this point. Maybe that you've already received that. So this is a way of potentially showing, right, well, we've invoiced you for £100, but let's say you've made a deposit of £20 already. I want to include that type of information on the invoice. You can essentially do that by saying, right, payment already received. If they're just paying it there and then, you can say, right, well, when I fill in this, when I update the invoice to the ledgers, I want it to post as a payment on account, or if possible, I want you to allocate the payment from the customer direct to the invoice, just to save you a little bit of time. Always get asked about pay deposit by card. That will only work if you're using the integration with what used to term Sage Pay. It's now called can't think of its title now, but it's by Elevon. I'll try and think of it. And it means that you can pay deposit by card. So you can take a card payment there and then. It gives you that functionality. Now, other than that, you're going to save it. So I'll just save it. Now, it should add it onto my list. It'll be on the bottom. You can see it's picked up that number there as well, 500. Does mean, obviously, in my example, I've got a gap there, but that's absolutely fine with that. Simon, you mentioned it there, a PO. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. I used to run webinars on Sage Pay many years ago, was rebranded, and we sold off that part of the company. Yeah, a PO by Elevon. If anyone needs to take card payments over the phone, then great option for you. It's something that has been available integration-wise for many, many years. Naomi, your quick question there was, do the payment details put your account details on the invoice? No, again, not by default. If you're wanting to include that, your sort of payment details, so let's say your bank details on your invoice, it's all to do with the design of your layout. So it might go through as text, it might be there as data fields. So we've covered that on previous webinars. But by default, it's only a couple of layouts will include your bank details. If you're using a layout that doesn't have that at the moment, then have a look. It'll avoid those types of calls, customers ringing you saying, well, can I just pay you online? Or you sending in an additional document that says, right, to pay us online, here's our details. You can include all of that information. Another question, can you search by notes? I don't think so. I'll have a quick look. Actually, I'll see if quick search does it. I'll pop one on. I'll just go back to order, pop in some notes. I'll put my dog's name in. I don't think that's in there already. Save the invoice, and if we do a quick search, oh, there you go. Yeah, you can. I didn't know that one, so yeah, even I learn new stuff every day. So it'll be in there. So must let you. Just get rid of that. Back to where I was. So you can search there. I don't think you'll be able to filter by notes. I don't think notes is an option within these fields. Let's just press N actually. No, so you need to use the quick search for that one. Right, let's quickly work through some of the other options that you've got available. So we'll just cover the options very quickly along the top. Now, some of obviously, if you've got nothing selected, most of them are going to be grayed out. So if you're thinking, why can't I click print? You just need to make sure you've got something selected. So new invoice we've looked at, new credit. If you can enter an invoice, you'd be more than capable of entering a credit. Edit. Just brings it up, lets you start amending it. You probably find the easier option is just double click it, it does the same thing. Or with one highlighted, if you go new invoice, you should find it brings up actually a blank one. So double clicking is probably the easiest option. By the time you go down and highlight the one you want to edit, you might as well just double click it rather than highlighting it and then clicking edit. Duplicate, interesting one. Really good for repeat invoices. Things like membership, subscriptions, professional fees. So this one I've just entered there. I could click duplicate at the top. It's going to pull it through, and it might be, right, well, actually, I want to do the same invoice, but for another customer. Save it. Job done. So we should have 501 there now. You've got other options, so duplicate as quotation, you've got duplicate as sales order, so that one would be available if you're on professional. You've got recurring, again, great if you're on things like monthly subscriptions, that type of thing, if that's what you provide, that's the type of service. Update ledgers, so this is the one, I mentioned this at the beginning, it's sort of your final step to push it onto the customer's account. It will not be on the customer's account, so it will not be reflected in their balance. It will not be on the activity of their account. It will not be reflected in your nominal ledger on your transactions list until you update your invoice to the ledgers. Or nice and easy, you highlight it, click update ledgers, choose your option. So if I just preview it, so essentially this is what converts the invoice into transactions. So nice, easy one. So I'll go into back to customers, A1 design services, onto the activity. Let's just maximize that so we can see it a little bit clearer. And you'll see we've got that there. So parts and labour, it's brought through that description. Remember that little tick box on the update ledgers tab within the settings defaults? If I tick that box, it wouldn't say parts and labour, so it wouldn't have pulled it through. It would have just said services instead. So it depends what you want to bring through. Again, we've got the reference in here, so it's got the invoice number, and in the bottom box, it's got the extra reference as well. Now, if you can't see this split, just at the top here, you've got hide detail, show detail. So if you just got the one sort of line or the one box, you don't have this breakdown. If you want to see that, just show detail, it'll break it down. Then whatever you highlight, it'll show you the detail. If you had an invoice with, like, say 5 items on there, for instance, it would, top box would just show the sort of the what we term the header information, the grouped information. It would show the top level information of the invoice with the full value. The bottom box would show you the breakdown, the individual items, and also any payments or credits against it as well. They'd all be listed in this bottom box here. See if I've got one. I can try and show you. So this one here is the top level. It's showing me I've got one item, but it's showing me also the detail of the receipt here as well. I can see that information. So £117.50 from SR, so sales receipt 265, refers to the transaction number, which if I look here, it's that one there. So I know what the transactions are linked, and when I highlight that receipt, we can see what it's actually paying off. You can get that detail if you want it. But this is the one that we just updated to the ledgers. Right, quickly popping back to invoices and credits. You've got some other options along the top as well. So update ledgers we just covered. Credit invoice. Don't really see anyone using this for service invoicing. Product invoicing, it's a really good option. It automatically generates the credit for you. So if we've got this one, let's try and pick on a one. It's a standard product invoice. Let's just give you an idea of what this would do. Right, I've only got one item on there. Let's try another one. We've got 2 items on that one, so we'll use this one. Right, so all we do for credit invoice, we highlight the relevant invoice. If we click credit invoice, it generates a credit note for me based on everything that was on the original invoice. Now I can amend that if required. I can press F8 to remove an item. If we had a quantity in there, I can change that. Even if it's just one, I can change it. It lets me. And then I can adjust the quantity accordingly. If you've got 50 items on there, it might be easier just to raise the credit note only manually. Whereas, you know, if it was just a couple, it might be easier to use the credit invoice and then just F8 on the items that you want crediting. But it makes it really quick, that credit invoice option. Print, we've covered that many times before on separate webinars. Amend your layout. You've got a quick email option. First time you click this, it will prompt you. It'll say, right, which layout do you want to use? And then going forward, when you click email, it will just select that layout for you, and it will try and output it to email. Similar for quick print. Rather than me, actually I'll show you that one again. Rather than me going through print and then trying to find the layout that I want to use and then sending it to the printer, what I can do with quick print is When I click it, first time I do it, it will ask me, right, which layout do you want to use? I'll just say, right, I want to use that one. Actually, we'll use that one. Just okay that. And then going forward, what it will do, it's picking up my PDF and everything driver now. So what it will do going forwards, it will be you highlight your invoice, you click quick print, it picks up that default layout, your default printer, and that's it. So it's one click and that's it done. Simon, you were mentioning there, can you bring a meaningful description if you import an invoice from another system like an asset manager or Syrinx, for example? Your description, when you import, you can't import onto your invoices list, or you can't use the standard sort of file import option. It won't let you import to the the invoices and credits list. If you've got a direct integration, then yes, potentially you could do that. I can't support you on that one, I'm afraid. But if you're using standard import, all you can do is import into against the customer's account. So you're importing transactions, and you're going to be restricted as to how much detail you can import on that one. So again, it depends what's included in your import file. So whether you've got the items broken down, whether you've got them grouped, depending what you need, of course. Right, so that's all a bit of a whirlwind tour of invoicing. If you've got any final questions for me, please pop them in there. I will try and pick them up as best I can. Again, if I'm not sure, I'll just get back to you later on with an answer. But pop your questions in there if you've got any. Remember that handout's there. There's a lot more detailed information available from our help center. On the handout, I've included a few standard links. But obviously that information it's really easy to find. Just get into the help center and search for what you're after. But some people do like links on handouts, just to see if you're having to do that. Now remember, there's loads of webinars coming up. I'll just quickly show you, give you an idea of what we've got on there at the moment. I go back to my screen, bring up my browser, get into the webinars page. So we've got what's new in Sage 50 Accounts version 33. I'm running that one for the first time this week. Still a little bit up in the air as to what's definitely going in and what isn't. Hasn't been released yet, or some people might have access to it, but general release is not quite yet. So changes to little change to Copilot to be introduced, gives you an opportunity to try Copilot without fully activating it. Margaret, I know you're about to ask, not available in Ireland yet. Still not, even on version 33, still not released for Ireland. Will be available if you are on the accountant's level. So if you're using Client Manager, you will now have access to Sage Copilot, but it does give you that option to try before you use it, like fully set it up. AI document capture, it's now going to attach documents. The documents you upload, it will automatically attach those to your transactions rather than having to manually do it. We got an update on Sage Assistant, which you've already got access to, and a little bit more as well. A couple of new tax codes for Irish users. And there's also a change which we requested earlier in the year, where if anyone works both Ireland and sort of UK VAT-wise, so you might have two separate companies, rather than use your regional options to determine which country you're based in and which VAT return to present you with, that will now be determined just by your country, which is attached to your address, which is, for me, that's how it always should have worked that way. But you now have that option where, just in case we've got any of you that are accountants, it means that you're not having to continually either work from two separate PCs or continually change your regional options. That's now resolved. So we've got version 33 in there. Get yourself registered if you are interested. I think we got potentially one more of those just before we break up for Christmas, and then we'll be running them in a bit more detail with a few extra options that should then be available from January onwards. Digital badge wise, we are running through the corrections series at the moment. This afternoon, we're looking at correcting journals. That's at 2, that's with me. We should have Matt and Abby on hand with to answer your questions for that one as well. And other sessions, obviously, this is what we're doing today. We've got Copilot in there. We're repeating this session on Monday next week. Abby's going to be running through bank feeds. We've got VAT returns. What else we got? That's it for this month. In January, we're looking Copilot still, working through the year-end sort of series. We're going to be looking at budgets again, part 1 and part 2. Again, keeping with that year-end theme, we've got company archives in there, lock dates. What else we got? Budgets part 2, Copilots, year-end, company archives, so a bit of a repeat at that point. Lock date as well, helping you to control who can and can't backdate late entries. If you've never used that before, great option. If your colleagues have ever, I think I'll just try and sneak that one in. You've already run a year end or a month end. You've sort of closed down that period. It helps with that. Helps you to control who can and can't backdate. So it's a really interesting one to go for. Really simple option, but really effective. So VAT returns in there as well. And then in February, we're going to be looking at things like management reports again, and also clearing out your records. If you've got any suggestions, get to the bottom of the timetable, get that submitted. Right, okay, we'll wrap up the webinar then at that point. I think we're just about done with questions at that point. So if you can take that minute just to complete that survey, pop some comments on there, be really appreciated. Again, if you think of anything that you'd like to see covered going forward, pop it on there as well. Your follow-up email will be with you in round about an hour's time. So many thanks for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hopefully it's given you a little bit more confidence, develop your knowledge just that little bit further. I'm sure many of you will be thinking, well, I think I knew all of that. Great, pleased. Just gives you a little bit of reassurance that your understanding is correct, but I'm sure some of you have picked up a few tips and it may have clarified things along the way. Right, we'll end the webinar just at that point. Many thanks, and hopefully I'll see, if not this afternoon, on the journals correction session. Hopefully I'll see you on some other sessions very soon. Many thanks.